Supported by you, our listeners, and by the Music Hall, located at 28 Chestnut Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. For more information, visit themusichall.org or call 603-436-2400.
And the weather, according to the Portsmouth Herald, today, cloudy, a shower, breezy, high of 54. Tonight, breezy and colder, going down to 28. Friday, mostly sunny, windy and colder, high of 40. Saturday, increasing clouds and breezy, high of 43. Sunday, breezy in the morning, otherwise sunny, high of 38. And Monday, breezy in the morning, mostly cloudy, high of 35. And from the community calendar, I'd like to okay, so WSCA is going to benefit from sales at the Fabulous Find Resale Boutique this month, now through Saturday, March 29th. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you that all this month of March, WSCA will be a recipient of a portion of all the proceeds from sales made at the Fabulous Find in Kittery. The Fabulous Find, located at 139 State Street, also known as Route 1, is a nonprofit resale boutique that benefits the local community. Since 2010, the Fabulous Find has donated more than $2.7 million to local nonprofit organizations. This month you may shop and support WSCA at the same time as Portsmouth Community Radio is fortunate to have been selected as one of the organizations to receive a portion of store sales. The Fabulous Find sells designer clothing, jewelry, home accessories, furniture, music, and books. More information about the store, including store hours, may be found at www.thefabulousfind.org. And we also have, from the community calendar, the Portsmouth Democratic Roundtable is held monthly. It'll be held March 11th. It's held the second Tuesday of each month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the 99 Restaurant in Portsmouth, 2454 Lafayette Road. That's also Route 1, in the Southgate Plaza. In March, the Roundtable will be on March 11th. The Roundtable is an opportunity to socialize with Democrats and other friends without any involved in the Portsmouth Democrats and learn of opportunities to get involved, suggest new ideas, or be supportive of planned initiatives. The Roundtable in April will be on April 8th. For information or questions, please contact Peter Somssich at 603-436-5382. That's 603-436-5382. Please don't send text, or you can email Peter at peter.somssich@gmail.com. Okay.
And good morning, Greater Portsmouth, and welcome to Seacoast Currents with Kathy and Larry. Good morning, Larry.
Morning, Kathy.
And what's on your mind this morning?
Well, Kathy, I'm so excited. I've learned a new expression, okay, just in the last 24 hours.
Wow.
Thanks to my wife, Joan. You know, she's on the case, always on the case. So here's the expression.
Yeah.
Elbows up. Have you ever heard that?
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Okay. Well, you probably haven't heard it, Kathy, because it's a Canadian expression.
Oh.
Okay, and what it means, I checked this on Wikipedia, okay, so I know what I'm talking about here, okay? It apparently originated from hockey, okay? They're like real big in hockey.
No kidding.
Okay, it means they're like getting ready for a fight, okay? So a lot of Canadians these days are saying elbows up to Donald Trump and his ridiculous tariffs that he has placed on Canada. You're probably aware of that, right? About a month ago, he said, "I'm going to put these steep tariffs on Canada and Mexico because of fentanyl." And then the leaders of the two countries say, "Hey, come on, He says, "Oh, I'm going to delay it for a month." Okay, so now he's put them on, and Justin Trudeau, who is their I don't know if he's the prime minister, the premier. He's their leader,
Prime Minister,
okay?
yeah.
He did this press conference the same day that Trump announced it.
Oh.
And it's on, you can go check it out on
I've
YouTube.
seen this.
Okay.
Yes. It's very
Okay,
impressive.
talk about, the guy's smooth,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
handsome. He's like giving this great speech, and I want to speak to the American people, and blah, blah, blah. And then he switches to French. He's going back to English and French. And then he's taking questions. People are asking him questions in French, English. The guy is really good. But the point is that Canada is like the best friend and ally that the United States has like ever had, okay? There were Canadian soldiers storming the beaches of Normandy on June 4th, 1944, okay? Part of the D-Day landing. Okay, they have been with us through thick and thin. They're friends, they're allies, they're good people.
They're neighbors.
They're neighbors, okay? So Trump is putting on this ridiculous tariff, okay? And of course, the Canadians are responding. Okay, so Kathy, New Hampshire, guess what? We have a border with Canada, and Canadians come here like in the summertime, but I don't think that many are going to be coming this summer because of this ridiculous tariff situation. It's not going to help the New Hampshire economy. So that's what's on my mind.
I've got to talk about this. This is so ridiculous, antagonizing the Canadians. It's like it's like picking a fight with a golden retriever. I mean, they're just polite, sweet, kind, and good neighbors, and for us to punish them like this with tariffs is just ridiculous. So, and does Donald Trump think that the Canadians are just going to take it? They're not going to just take it. They are fighting back, and it has awoken a pride and nationalism in Canada that is quite unusual for the modest Canadians.
Yes.
And I just read that Justin Trudeau is resigning from his position. He was unpopular, and his party was down 20 points in the last poll against the Conservative Party, which Trump has been kind of promoting. Well, ever since this whole Trump tariff business, it's the polls are up now. I mean, they are now equal. So they came up. The Liberal Party came up 20 points, and now it's neck and neck. And they've got a new candidate that's waiting in the wings, and the whole election looks completely different now. So thanks, Trump.
Right. So, Kathy, what's on your mind?
Well, of course, I just got back from a week in blue California and blue Long Beach, my hometown. And it's always funny to go back to your hometown. My hometown has changed a lot since I was a kid, but it's great to go back. Long Beach is a big city, almost 500,000 people, and it is what they used to call majority minority. There's another term for that right now. I don't know what it is, but there is another term for that. And it is filled with immigrants and people from all over, and I don't know. They don't walk around with signs telling you that they're legal or documented or undocumented. But this Long Beach runs on these folks that they make it work. They work hard. They are out there. They are serving the public. They are doing so much. And it pains me when I hear Donald Trump blame everything on immigrants. It physically makes me ill.
No, it's disgusting.
Because going back home, being in Long Beach, being in this kind of atmosphere, and Long Beach is a great city. It's big, but it's clean and it's vibrant. It's got a culinary life, and it's got arts. We saw 2 plays while we were out there. I mean, it's a great city. I don't like the traffic. There's a lot of traffic.
Well, There's a lot of traffic in many places.
Yes, I know. Long Beach is not the only one with traffic,
Right.
But it's a big city
Yeah,
and has to
yeah.
deal with that.
Right.
But it's it's not a broken down city. It doesn't have
Right.
boarded up storefronts. It
Right.
is lively and
Right.
vibrant and
Right.
exciting, and I attribute a lot of that to the fact there are people from all over the world here living in this city and making it fun and exciting.
Right.
So it was wonderful to be there, and that
Okay.
meant I got back late Tuesday night, which means that I missed on purpose the big speech of Trump's in front of the.
Yeah, I decided not to punish myself by watching it.
Unusual for you. Is that unusual
Well,
for you?
Yeah, well, I try not to punish myself generally. Okay, but
Yes, that's a good idea.
I'm just saying that you can read about it, and if you really are a glutton for punishment, you can go look at YouTube. Okay, or you can listen to the pundits, dissect it. But no, it's like, why am I going to stress myself?
It is stressful, and I think because the things that I have seen about it, well, first of all, they're just lies, made up stuff.
I mean, the news would be if they weren't lies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he does. He lies.
Yes, it's amazing, and it's and then I just couldn't. I have some problems with how the Democrats respond, and I don't know what the best way to respond to such blatant baloney. I mean, what should they have done? What did they do? They had little paddles. They had little whiteboards. They had little signs. They had booze. I mean, I don't know.
We're in uncharted territory here, Kathy. We're all trying to figure out
we
how
don't
to
know what
deal
to
with
do.
it.
We don't know.
Anyway,
Tell you the truth, I think what Congressman Green did was probably the best thing.
Right.
He just yelled back and got himself thrown out, and I'm going, maybe more of them should have done that.
Right.
Just yelled and gotten thrown out.
Right.
Sometimes that's very therapeutic. So there you go. That's what's on my mind.
Okay.
I want to remind our listeners this morning that if you'd like to get involved with a conversation with us and our guest, you can either email us at seacoastcurrents@gmail.com, and that's going to pop up here in front of me, and or you can also text us at 603-430-9722, and your text will pop up over there on the computer in front of Larry. And we've already got an email already. What is this? Oh, D-Day. D-Day, June 6th. I think you said June 4. You got corrected.
Okay. I'm embarrassed. It was June 6th.
Yes.
1944. I don't know. That was just a mistake. June 6th, 1944.
I love our listeners. They are listening very carefully, and they let us know.
Thank you for the correction. I'm embarrassed.
It's okay. Forgive you. You're pretty good at dates.
Yeah, I like to think I am.
Yeah,
anyway.
you are. We're very happy to welcome here in the studio with us Kaylie Efstratiou. And Kaylie is the Public Policy Fellow for Open Democracy. Good morning, Kaylie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm
Thanks.
excited.
Yeah, well, thanks. We're thrilled that you're here to join us. You are the Public Policy Fellow for Open Democracy, and I'm first going to ask you, tell us about Open Democracy. What kind of organization is this? What do you do? What are your goals? How do you achieve them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Open Democracy is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization representing over 36,000 voters across the state of New Hampshire, and we're committed to expanding voter access, promoting electoral transparency, fighting for fair redistricting, and advocating for campaign finance reform, so all that good stuff. Our founder, it was Doris Haddock, also known as Granny D. She actually had her name changed to that. She dedicated her entire life to service, but she entered the national spotlight after walking 3,200 miles across age 90. She also helped create the momentum necessary to pass the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. But yeah, my time so far as a public policy fellow for Open Democracy has been a truly educational experience. I've gotten to attend many of the House and Senate election law public hearings, and just you learn something new every day.
Bet you do.
Yes, it's quite a treat. It's been interesting, especially to observe the dynamics of the committee and how policy advocacy works by getting to observe the fellow speakers at the public hearings as well. And there does seem to be a good rapport among the committee members, even though it is so divided otherwise. So it gives me some hope that maybe some good bipartisan legislation will be able to come out of this session.
Well, let's talk about that. Since you brought up legislation, Kaylie, there's been a lot of bills that have come through that committee, and I know you're on top of these. Let's talk about the one that it always intrigues me the most, and that is about students, college students voting here in New Hampshire. And there's always been this, argument about residence versus domicile, and do you vote where you sleep, or do you vote where your car's registered? So what is the situation right now with college students and voting, and what kind of bills are out there that address this?
Yeah, so basically the legislature is trying to chip away at student voting via removing student IDs as a valid form of identification once at the polls. And because of HB 1569, which is in effect now, you cannot even sign an affidavit to fulfill the proof of citizenship requirement during registration. As you know, most students' first priority when moving into college isn't usually going to be remembering to pack their birth certificate or their passport with them, which will almost undoubtedly lead to decreased student voter turnout in future elections to come. Some pertinent bills on student voting are HB 684. This would prevent the use of student ID cards as a means to obtain a ballot, as well as HB 323. This requires government-issued photo IDs to vote, and it also excludes both out-of-state driver's licenses and student IDs, as well as HB 472, which would require the supervisor of the checklist to review proof of a voter's domicile before they are allowed to vote, which is just a total conflation of the registration and voting check-in processes. But yeah, this attack on student voting bills is a big issue, and I think it's one that can be argued against from using, common sense and logic. Like, the U.S. Census counts out-of-state college students at their colleges because that's where they spend the most of their time. That's where the laws affect them the most. So I think it only makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, I heard someone say, you live where you do your laundry. So
Exactly. I don't know why it needs to be any more complex than that.
Yeah, right. So that 1569, that was signed by Governor Sununu. Do you have any feeling if the new governor, Kelly Ayotte, has a different approach to students voting?
In my opinion, I believe she will follow Governor Sununu's lead and his precedent set, unfortunately, but she could surprise us all. It is interesting. Governor Sununu actually said in June 2024 that he was not looking to make any significant changes in voting laws. And this is because the 2022 Special Committee on Voter Confidence in New Hampshire that Olivia Zink, the executive director of Open Democracy, actually got to be a part of. They did very thorough research, and they found that New Hampshire elections display, quote, only rare and isolated instances of fraud. Checks and balances are in place to deter and prevent such occurrences, and processes exist to investigate and correct these errors when they occur. So this was just kind of an interesting step to make in light of that. As a background, Secretary of State Dave Scanlon also recently said that despite all this, that it has been, quote, too easy to vote in New Hampshire.
Too easy.
Exactly, yes. He said this during a February voter registration and impacts of non-resident voting subcommittee meeting. And also good to note, he said this despite New Hampshire's ranking of last in the country for ease of voting in the 2022 edition of the Cost of Voting Access, which is based on the overall investment a resident must make in terms of time and resources to vote. So,
Wait, we're dead last?
yep, dead last. Republicans in the state they may have their own opinions on the validity of the source, but we're dead last.
Yeah, and despite that, it's interesting because we usually have a pretty, comparatively speaking, a high rate of voter turnout in New Hampshire. Yeah, and that's a good thing, and we want to make that even better and higher.
Exactly. That should be the goal, getting as many eligible voters to the polls as possible and making sure they can cast their right to vote.
So what are the pending bills right now? What can you tell us about some of the pending bills? Good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, so some more bills that are pending. I guess we can move on to absentee voting and notarization bills. So New Hampshire is one of just 14 states in the country that still requires an excuse to vote by absentee ballot. Right. The New Hampshire Constitution only enumerates 2 reasons for absentee voting in Article 11. These are absence from the town on election day and disabilities, which legislators have since expanded upon to include other things like work and childcare obligations. But despite the already limited list of reasons an individual is allowed to vote by absentee, some legislators this session want to make it even harder to do so, citing security reasons, as I'm sure is like a common trickle-down effect throughout the country. However, the Brennan Center has noted that cases of voter fraud related to absentee voting are so rare that it is more likely that someone will be literally struck by lightning. Yeah, that phrase actually during a public hearing on one of these absentee voting bills got reused, I think, 3 times. So it's a pretty good stat. And the push against absentee comes despite evidence of increased voter participation when access to voting by mail is easier. Policy changes during the height of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic that allowed anyone concerned about the virus to vote by absentee resulted in record-breaking turnout, with roughly 60,000 more voters from both parties than the previous presidential election exercising their right to vote. So yeah, these attacks are pretty unfounded. One of the most egregious bills relating to absentee is HB 418. And this would remove religious observance, work and childcare obligations, and even extreme weather events like snowstorms as valid excuses for receiving an absentee ballot. And this is likely to get a recommendation of ought to pass from the committee because it is a Republican majority committee.
So, yeah, that is surprising too. So that would really limit it to I'm out of town and I'm disabled. I mean, those are really the only 2 valid ones that would be left.
Yeah, and I think a lot of their viewpoint, they think that that's the way it should be. That's the way it was enumerated in the Constitution, and you just have to get out to vote in person and make that commitment. But it's becoming more impossible to do so. It's unrealistic in a society where time is money. It's just not that easy anymore. And I think that's a disconnect that exists currently.
And since during COVID, numbers increased for using absentee ballots, but for both parties. So it's not like it's a partisan argument here. This is they just want to make it harder to vote.
Exactly, yeah. It's a totally bipartisan issue. I think a lot of Republican constituents could also really value absentee ballots. I think a lot of Republican constituents are older, so they may be in nursing homes, and this may be the best way for them to vote. Yeah, and then also not to mention that New Hampshire is supposed to be the live free or die state. You don't have to wear a seatbelt, but you do have to provide your excuse why you need to vote by absentee. It's yeah.
I want to talk about House Bill 686, and that's about the need to have this notarized, which just puts another layer of complication on voting absentee. So they want you to actually then take your ballot to wherever, to a notary public, and get it notarized before. I mean, it just, a lot of people aren't even going to bother then.
Exactly. It's unrealistic and burdensome, and I think that they recognize this, and it is probably the intention that a lot of people just won't want to bother to do this. It's crazy.
What do you think is the reasoning behind this? I mean, they'll probably tell you they want to make sure that busloads of undocumenteds are coming across the border to vote or something. But what do you think is the real reason for trying to make it so hard?
I think one of the real reasons for trying to make it so hard, it is politically motivated, unfortunately. They just have the upper hand in the legislature right now. But, that upper hand could easily flip. We don't know who's going to be in power in the coming elections. And taking this side could really hurt Republicans in the future. But I think also what I've been hearing a lot at the committee meetings is that they do say that a lot of these bills are submitted in an effort to reflect the will of their constituents. There are constituents in New Hampshire that are concerned with the security of the voting systems. And it seems that some legislators this session are more concerned with addressing and catering to these false perceptions held by some voters that the elections are unsecure, and focusing on that rather than working with the reality of the situation in mind, which could inadvertently lead to disenfranchising eligible voters in this pursuit of security. So I guess, bigger picture, we as a state need to decide what's really most important here, facts or fiction. Yeah.
Right. All right, let's talk about some of these other independent voter bills. What would be what are those bills?
Yeah, so independent voter restrictions, there are two bills that seek to restrict undeclared independent voters from same-day voting on the presidential primaries. These are HB 220 and HB 172. In a state where independent voters make up nearly 40% of the electorate, passing these bills would blatantly disenfranchise countless undeclared Granite Staters, who obviously take great pride in voting, despite not being as radical as some of their partisan counterparts. Additionally, New Hampshire taxpayers currently subsidize political party candidate selection for the two major parties, so restricting undeclared voters from the primaries would only work to further ostracize and penalize these voters, who themselves are the ones funding the elections. These bills were drafted with the intention of curbing the crossover voting that has been observed occurring, but the levels of malicious crossover voting are not significant enough to warrant silencing such a massive portion of constituents. And as Chairman Barry of the House Election Law Committee duly noted when discussing HB 172, which would have restricted undeclared voters from same-day voting in presidential or state primaries, even the most concerted efforts of bad faith actors on the left during last year's presidential primaries resulted in little impact on the Republican nominee. And ejecting all undeclared voters from the primary would essentially be forfeiting 80% of votes cast in good faith just to go after the 20% that could be considered to have been casting bad faith. So I will say that the committee seems not to be super overjoyed about these bills. They were recommended and expedient to legislate. So there's
Okay.
I don't think these bills are likely to go very far, but
They won't go far.
Yeah, it is just concerning to see some of these ideas.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous to penalize people, make them pay for a two-party system when they don't necessarily, feel connected to either party. And is there a lot of that, of people trying to have an influence in a I mean, we're all trying to just influence our party's candidate. So whether we're affiliated with a party or just an independent voter, I don't see why there is that issue. So I'm glad to hear that that's going to be an expedient.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. How about ranked choice?
Oh, yes.
What's going on with that here in New Hampshire?
So, ranked choice voting, this actually had its public hearing recently, either a week or two ago. HB 600 was put forth by Representative Reed, and it would enable ranked choice voting for state primary elections and municipal elections. So this was an enabling bill. It doesn't mandate anything. It just allows towns to decide for themselves what is best.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was recommended as inexpedient to legislate by the committee. Reasons being that the system is just too complicated, voters don't understand it. So unfortunate.
In the states where we've seen ranked choice voting, it seems to be very popular and it seems to work well. And I think it gives the voter a little bit more power.
Yeah, your vote counts way more. I mean, the system, like the ranked choice voting system, was designed specifically to be like the most efficient and like powerful way to have your voice heard. So it is supposed to appease the greatest number of people. I think that there is a tendency to just be afraid and run away from things you don't fully understand, but I don't fully understand how my car works. I still get in it and drive it every day, so yeah.
Good analogy. So here's a bill that sounds interesting, creating a single primary ballot.
Yes. So this was presented before HB 600, the ranked choice voting bill. This was also a really interesting proposal. Representative Reed did have one concern about this, that it could create single-party sweeps in multi-member districts, which would basically be one party, just say they had 55% of the vote, they would take the majority of the seats, and then the 45% on the other side would be left unrepresented. So there was some qualms about this bill, and I think it had less of a chance than being passed than HB 600, but it did come out of the New Hampshire Citizens Assembly last year, which was a bipartisan assembly, and every bill that came out of this had to get an approval threshold of over 80%, and this was one of those bills. So it really sounded like a great first effort from this bipartisan committee, and yeah, hopefully there will be more work that comes out of the Citizens Assembly and brings us more bipartisan legislation like that, because it just really shows how important bipartisan cooperation is during times like this.
So what can folks do if they feel strongly about making voting more easy? What can we do?
Yeah, so first, you can sign in virtually to support or oppose bills, and you can also provide testimony. You can do this on the New Hampshire General Court website. You could also show up to the State House in Concord to testify in person, and the schedule for public hearings is available on the New Hampshire General Court website. You could and you should contact your representatives via phone or email. Since we have 400 state representatives, they don't have staff themselves, so they usually will answer their phone. And I think even in the states that, have no excuse absentee voting and aren't attacking student voting rights, it's just lines are too long. It takes too long for people to do. It's not right.
No.
It shouldn't be this hard to cast your vote. Yeah.
I mean, if we take our democracy seriously, and I hope most of us do, it should be easier. That means more voting stations and shorter lines and, just making it easier for people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or are some of these 90 million, do they feel maybe my vote doesn't count?
So yeah, I actually think a lot of these 90 million probably are just, they don't have trust in the political system anymore, and it's kind of understandable. A lot of this could be due to like they just feel like their vote has not enough power. This can be due to like gerrymandering as well, partisan gerrymandering. The Princeton Gerrymandering Project gave New Hampshire a letter grade of F for the Senate maps.
Yikes.
Yeah, so the state is just partisanly gerrymandered as well, which makes there's less incentive for people to vote because their vote will inherently have less of an impact.
Yeah.
So there's another aspect to that. The United States has, as I think we all know, or many of us know, we have this thing called the Electoral College.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, whereby each state, whoever wins the state, gets all the electoral votes. And so if you're a Democrat in Oklahoma, which is very Republican, or you're a Republican in California, which is very Democratic, some people may figure, well, why am I going to vote for president? Because there's no way that my candidate's going to win. So I'm just saying, I think that we ought to get rid of the Electoral College and just have it as whoever wins the most votes wins. But I think that the Electoral College, we should not downplay that as a factor that discourages people from voting. Anyway.
I'm going to get personal, Kaylie. You graduated your undergrad degrees from UNH in poli-sci and communication with a minor in social justice leadership. And right now you're a grad student, and you're working on your master's in poli-sci.
I am, yes. Very exciting.
Yeah.
It's been a great opportunity. I'm actually in UNH offers an accelerated program for political science, so it's just one extra year. I thought that would be perfect for me. Seems like a little bit of a discount, and I really enjoy what I'm learning, and I thought it would be really beneficial to get some more seminars out of that. Currently I'm taking one called Reform in American Government, which goes greatly with the open democracy job that I'm working with now. It's a great add-on. I'm also taking one called Conflict and Environmental Peace Building, which is great. Focus a lot on the war in Gaza, so get a little bit of the international politics too. But yeah, it's been great to be a political science student during these times. I think it gives me a little bit of guidance on, how to handle these things that are going on in the real world. Yeah.
Well, you've obviously been interested in political science from an early age. Why is that?
Yeah, so my dad actually in Massachusetts, he ran for the school committee and he's still on it. He's just kept running. And I'm from a rather Republican-leaning town in Massachusetts. And I helped him a little bit with his campaign, and I just found so much joy in the fight. I've continued to take on these sort of internships. I organized during the 2022 midterms and the 2024 presidential election, and it's great to see how much of an impact you can have. I remember during the 2022 elections, we were dorm storming, which was going into the dorms at UNH and knocking on people's doors and yelling at them to go vote, which was really fun for me. And sometimes as an organizer, obviously you can feel that you're not having an impact and what is this all for? But that year there were students that ran out and were like, oh, where's the polling place? How do I get there? So it's great because you do have an impact. Maybe even like the people who you're not directly talking to overhear what you're saying and you have an impact. So yeah, it's just great to keep talking to people.
I'm really excited to hear about the high school voter registration, and that's when you got to start. We've got all these 18-year-olds right there in high school,
exactly.
Who I think are just starting to kind of wake up to their world.
Exactly. Yeah, and I believe you're more likely to be a lifelong voter if you register to vote at 18. So it's really just the most important time. You gotta get them while they're young.
Get them while they're young. Yeah, and and New Hampshire's it's a small state, but being first in the nation with the primary, it kind of gets into your blood, and every 4 years, it's really kind of an exciting place. But right now I'm just feeling it goes beyond excitement. Right now, I feel we're living in kind of frightening times.
Oh yeah, unprecedented it seems.
And I think a lot is asked of us as citizens. If you take democracy seriously, if you take being an American seriously, you can't not get involved and speak up like
Exactly.
Congressman Al Green from New York, bless his heart.
I think he's from Texas.
Oh, you're right. It is Texas. You're absolutely right. See, you know things like that.
Exactly.
But you're right.
Yeah, there's a quote that goes like, "You may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you."
That is so true.
You know.
That is so true. And we were talking before we went on the air. We only got a couple minutes left, but before we went on the air, we were kind of talking about why are young men right now drawn to the Republican Party. This is something new going on. I don't know if it's just Joe Rogan or it's something else is going on. What do you think, Kaylie? You're a young person.
Kaylie. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
Kaylie.
you're so good though. Just had to correct that on the record. But
thank you.
No, it's like the wave of podcast elections. I think we saw that in the 2024 general election, how much of an impact these had, especially on young men. The Joe Rogan impact and all of those, like they call them podcast bros now. I honestly think it is connected to DEI a little bit. We see the pendulum swinging back, and people think that giving more rights and power to other people takes them away from them somehow. I think this is like an attempt for them to reassert their masculinity without much care for what that really means, and how offensive that can be. It's crazy. And I think maybe we as, I don't know. Yeah. I'm really offended when folks think if a woman's in charge or a person of color's in charge, they're automatically inferior and not qualified and just got into that job for some nefarious reason. And I'm so offended that it's so only white men are qualified. When you look at Trump's appointees, they're the least qualified people. Seriously, yeah. He says that we're now living in a meritocracy again, but what if they have merit? What is the merit? Like that they're just the most loyal followers of Donald Trump. Like it's the blatant hypocrisy is hard to deal with.
That is a little hard to swallow. That's how you get merit in their world is you suck up to Donald Trump, and
exactly.
So that qualifies you for having that I always found that so offensive. Kaylie, is there anything else that we have not talked about that you wanted to make sure you got out today?
I think we covered it all. There is a lot to say, so I guess I would just say people stay informed, stay up to date, know who your representatives are, and, this new law, HB 1569, with all these new registration requirements will be in effect during the town elections this coming Tuesday, March 11th, so keep your eyes peeled. If you see anyone being turned away, ask them what's going on maybe. But yeah, just be ready for that and the new changes.
Does Georgia still have that law that you can't provide water to anyone standing outside waiting to vote?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know about that. Georgia has that law?
It did. I don't know if it's still on the books.
I don't know. I hope
isn't that the most horrible thing?
Yeah, that's heinous. Just heinous.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Kaylie, it's been great having you here. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. It gives me, great hope for our democracy. It's important work you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys both for your work too, informing the public. That's as important as it gets.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Kaylie
thanks,
Efstratiou, and who is with Open Democracy. She's the public policy fellow over there. And all the best to you, Kaylie.
You too.
We're going to take a short musical break. We'll be back on the other side of 9 o'clock for the second half of Seacoast Currents.
Basewood.